The first half of the presentation is going to be more about me talking and explaining things to you, and the second half is a bit more about you guys doing. So I am going to try and build in some breaks as we go, but if you need to have a little break in between, use the chat and just write move in there, and then I will make sure that we all, you know, have a little stretch and a move to sort of keep us all engaged, because the first bit is a bit heavier than the second bit in a different way. Of course, if I can't see the chat, if you're able to unmute and shout move, then you're welcome to do that, or just do it for yourself. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk through is just what we're going to do today. So I'm going to talk about the ADHD brain. I'm going to talk about self-regulation. There's so many places we could have gone with this, and I think that one of the things that people with ADHD as parents find the hardest, and is one of the most important things, is being able to regulate our emotions. So I'm going to focus on that today. Then we're going to talk a bit more about emotions and why we have emotions and what they're designed to do. And look at our own reactions to emotions. We're going to look at some stressful interactions that you might be having typically at home with your children. That's work that you're going to be doing yourself in the workbook. And I'm going to give you some ideas for reframes. And then we are going to create our own strategies to be able to regulate ourselves. And then at the end, I don't think in the hour we're going to have time for Q&A, but afterwards, I'm very happy to stay on and answer any questions that you have. Can I get a thumbs up or something in the chat from people just to let me know whether or not that's clear, and to see also whether I can see the chat. Okay, lovely. I'm hoping that means that is clear and you can see this. Right. So the problem that we face as ADHD parents is that parenting is 80% modeling. It doesn't matter what we do or what we say, it's what we do. So kids are watching us and they're copying us. And ADHD parents find it really, really hard to self-regulate. And the problem with that is if we model dysregulation, our kids are going to copy us. It doesn't matter what we say, it doesn't matter all the brilliant other things we do. If we're modeling dysregulation more often than regulation, that is what our kids are going to pick up. And they are then going to become more and more dysregulated, which is going to stress us out. And then we'll become more dysregulated. And there's this sort of vicious cycle, and it just feels too hard and we give up. Instead, if we can model calm and be able to rely on ourselves to remain in control, our children are going to watch that and they're going to pick that up and they're going to learn those skills, and they're going to get calmer, and their home is going to feel calmer, and life is just going to get easier. Everyone feels happier. You're practicing regulation and succeeding in it more and more, and your brain is going to start wiring to make you more regulated generally. And the more you practice, the better you'll get, and you go into a cycle going the other way, and everyone feels better and you get better and life gets better. So that's what we want, and that is what I'm going to try and get us on the pathway to today. I'm guessing everyone here has probably tried many times to be better parents, or to stop snapping at their kids, stop shouting at their kids, stop shouting at their partners. But the truth is, until we learn to reach a state of calm or a state of self-regulation, and we have the tools to get us there quickly when we need to, and until we have the things in place in the background to look after our own nervous system so we're able to rely on our ability to self-regulate, we're never going to be able to change our parenting. It's not actually possible. So it's not that we're not trying hard enough. You can try as hard as you want, but until you've got all of that stuff in the background going on, and you've practiced and you know how to do it, you're not going to be able to do it when it gets tough. And we also know that if we don't change how we're showing up for our kids, we can't expect them to change how they're showing up for us. So my aim today essentially is to help you figure out what you need to get your own individual nervous system into a state where you can be calm enough to model peaceful communications consistently, so that then your kids will be able to do the same. And then, so as our children begin to experience this as normal, they will start to copy us, and we're already going to be on the road to a more peaceful household. So with that being said, I'm about to go into the brain bit, but let's have a stretch. Let's shake our arms out a bit. Let's try and get our minds and bodies in focus for the next section. Does anyone have anything they want to raise on the bits that I've just said? So, the unique ADHD brain. ADHD is the most inheritable mental health condition. Over 50% of people with ADHD will go on to give their children ADHD, or their children will go on to inherit it. So the chances are, if you are a parent with ADHD or suspect ADHD, you will have children with a similar presentation. ADHD refers to living with persistent inattention, hyperactivity, or impulsivity that is more severe than is typically observed in peers. That's the kind of essential definition of it. And on this slide, we can see there's the executive functioning skills divided into two sections. So we've got our hot skills and our cold skills. Skills are those that we're conscious of. So they respond really well to direct instruction, and they're the ones that are easier to change. The cold skills tend to be much more unconscious and are therefore harder to influence. So for this reason, it makes sense that we work to try and enhance the use of our hot skills, and largely accept the cold skills as things we need to find workarounds for. So in parenting, clearly, we could work to improve our verbal and behavioural control. Then we can have more positive relationships with our children and our spouses. Life would be much easier and less overwhelming if we had organisation down. If we could manage our time, we'd never be late or early. We would have much less stress leaving the house. You get the picture. With the cold skills, we need to understand what our energy levels are like. If our working memory is poor, then we can make adjustments, perhaps by writing everything down or relying on the executive function of somebody else that we spend a lot of time with. Sustained attention is going to be a challenge unless we're medicated. So you can use fidgets while you're listening to things. You can colour. You can ask lots of questions. You can engage in different ways. You need to find things that work for you. But essentially, we know that the cold skills are things that you're not going to be able to do that much about. It is how your brain is made up, and you sort of have to work with it. Whereas the hot skills are things that we can train our brains. Our brains are plastic, and we can train them to grow and learn things to change in some of the hot skills, and some things we don't want to change. I mean, having ADHD isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's so prevalent and so consistently prevalent in society at the same kind of levels with the same kind of presentation over so long, that we know that actually it looks like evolutionary, sort of in the evolutionary terms, ADHD people are necessary, in order to, keep things going. We play a vital role, but it's about using our brains and in the right way, and in a way that isn't just making our lives extremely difficult. So this is the brain. In fact, let's have one more stretch and just sort of move ourselves around a bit, just to refocus. Right, I want everyone to rub their hands together and then put them together like this. That's the size of your brain. It weighs about 1.5 kilograms, and it reaches its full size and volume by the age of 10. At the back of your brain is the physiological center, otherwise called the reptilian brain. And that's what keeps us alive. It's fully connected from birth, and it manages things like breathing, like blood pressure, like our heart rate. And without it, we wouldn't survive. In the middle of our brain, we have our emotional brain, or our mammalian brain, and that's where our limbic system is. And it's also where our amygdala is situated. And then on the left side of our brain, we have our verbal and memory brain. At the front, we have our frontal lobe and our prefrontal cortex, which is the bit that is really affected in ADHD. So that's where our executive function is held. And it's the last part of the brain to fully develop. So full development normally takes place at around the age of 25. In ADHD, the brain's typically delayed by about 3 years. So you can expect that to be about 3 years later. And that will track throughout childhood as well. So if your child's 10, you wouldn't probably be expecting their executive functioning skills to be at the same level as another 10-year-old. They're probably going to be more like a 7-year-old's. So that can give you some context and understanding of how your children are reacting to certain things, or why they're not able to do what their friends can do. Why can't they just clean their rooms? Why can't they do the thing that you've asked without you having to remind them 3,000 times? It's because of that executive function which is delayed. We also know from MRIs that some parts of the ADHD brain are smaller. So the corpus callosum, which is known as the sort of superhighway of the brain, that's smaller. The anterior right frontal region, the hippocampus, and the amygdala are all smaller in ADHD brains. As we get older, our brains get better integrated. And as I said before, it's really important to remember that our brains are plastic, not actually plastic, but they're malleable. So they change and adapt and make adjustments along the way. And that's really, really helpful, because right through our lives, we can change how our brains work. And once we start to kind of use our brains in different ways, we can create new neural pathways which can change the way that we think. And that is what I want to look at today. So, okay, so regulating your emotions. So regulating your emotions is noticing the feelings and the sensations in your body. So you become conscious of the emotions. And that allows your brain to integrate the messages and decide how to respond, instead of letting your subconscious emotions take over and react. It's also taking responsibility to calm yourself, so you can act like a responsible and kind grown-up rather than indulging in your own tantrum. I was going to ask everyone to say whether or not, in fact, I can do this with a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So can you give me hands in the air or thumbs up if you've ever indulged in your own adult tantrum? I certainly have. It's really, really, it can be really, really tempting to kind of just go into that place. And that's because we're responding to actually the needs that we had as children. Regulation is also monitoring your mood and giving yourself the support that you need to maintain a sense of well-being. And that can include self-care and working through intense emotions as they arise. Regulation is not numbing yourself or pushing down your emotions, because they will keep popping up to be heard. It's not blaming your child or someone else for your emotions. It's not pretending you feel something that you don't, or that you don't feel something that you do, because children always know. They're really, really good at knowing what's going on under the surface. So there isn't much point in pretending. Okay, so Brené Brown is a best-selling author and researcher who studies emotions and experiences that define what it means to be human. And she says that there are 87 different types of emotions, although most people can only recognize 3 of them. Did anyone figure out what the 3 emotions, or can anyone have a guess at what the 3 emotions are that people recognize? Feel free to type it in the chat if you don't want to shout out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've all got it. So yeah, I mean, she wasn't quite as polite as you guys. She said happy, sad, and I won't say because I know there's kids here, but something off. So yes, they're the 3 that people recognize, but there's actually 87. So what I'd like us to do now is, did you all manage to get your workbook? If you haven't managed to get it and print it, then that's complicated. And I think some people will have the software to be able to edit the PDFs and some won't. You can just use a pen and paper and write these down. But what I'd like you to do is write down one time when you were able to self-regulate when another time you might not have been able to. So for instance, you know, your kids are fighting and there's a big mess everywhere and loads going on, and a time when you're able to kind of remain calm and deal with it. So think of one occasion when you were able to just, you know, you're quite pleased with how you reacted, and then write down what made that possible and how you can do more of that, and then think about how you can do more of that in the future. So I'm going to just give you 3 minutes to write that down, and I'm going to put on some ADHD friendly music. I don't know if anyone's used binaural beats before, but they're a really good way to focus our mind when we're doing a bit of focus work. And no rush, guys, we've still got another minute or so, but when you've done it, if you could just pop a thumbs up or something in the chat, just so I get an idea. If you can't save it or edit it, just if there's some way you could just write down things. Oh, it comes up as a blank page of it, that's a shame. I'll write down the questions just so you've got them in the chat. You've done it, Natalie, super. I am going to just write down the questions just so you've got them then, if you haven't been able to get it open. So it's a time when you were able to regulate, what you did to make it possible, and how you do. How can you do more of it in the future? Does anyone have an example they'd like to share? No worries if you don't, but it'd be great to hear if anyone does. Hi, Kerry. Let me just make you a contributor so you can join the chat. There we go. Welcome. Kerry, we're just going through the first exercise. Oh, Beck, you're just updating us. So when your daughter's melting down, you managed to stay calm. Super. And what did you do, Beck, in order to make that possible? Have you got any idea what was different? breathed and remembered what a meltdown is, and you also physically step back a bit. Super, brilliant. And is there anything that you think you could do to make that possible, sort of to enable you to do more of it in the future? Or if anyone else has got any ideas for how Beck might be prompted to remember what a meltdown is and to remember to breathe and give herself some physical space. Yeah, you need to take that moment to engage your rational brain before you do anything. Absolutely. Don't worry, Kerry. I don't think anyone could access it. I don't know what's going on. I think it's on there, but I don't know how you get to it. So we're all doing it on Google Meet, and I will try and figure this out better for next time. We're just onto the exercises. So we just talked a little bit about the ADHD brain and self-regulation and emotions. But there will be a recording so you can catch up on all of that, and it's not going to stop you being able to do the next bit, so don't worry. So we were just sort of thinking about a time when we were able to regulate ourselves. Okay, so I think we will move on to the next exercise. Thank you so much for sharing, Beck. We will give you some more ideas for that, for the ways that you can do it again later on. You can regulate yourself much better when you've had adequate sleep. Yeah, absolutely. If not, you struggle massively. And actually, if you've got ADHD, sleep is really, really crucial. It affects us much more if we're tired. I'd also say, in response to what Beck said about needing to take a moment to engage your rational brain, it's absolutely true, and that's probably one of the things that we find the hardest, is to have that sort of pause between the thing that's happened and reacting, and that pause is what an ADHD brain finds extremely hard to access, and that's why these self-regulation tools are so important. Okay, right, so let's move on to the next slide. I need to find my slides now. They disappeared too. So, reframe. So I would like you to now think about 3 times when you were angry with your child. So I want you to write down the perception of the situation and how it made you feel. So I've given an example here of just something that happened a couple of days ago. So I had flu earlier this week, and it was pouring with rain, and my daughter wanted to go and have a play date at another parent's house, and one of her friend's house, and another parent. And this woman has 2 twins who are 5 and another girl who was 7. And I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And they both wanted to go round to their house. And we'd been invited. But I had flu, so I didn't feel like I could go because I would potentially make the rest of the meal. And I also didn't feel like I could send the 2 of them because the house is chaotic, and she's got a really bad knee at the moment and is on crutches. So I thought it's not appropriate for them to go on their own, and they can't go. So we said, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be able to do it today. She completely lost it. Sat down on the road outside school, sobbing her heart out, screaming, shouting, I have to go, I have to go. And it was really, really stressful. And it was pouring with rain. And I was really ill and shouldn't have even probably been doing pickup, and I felt rubbish. So that was what happened. My perception of the situation was kind of like, initially, I don't have time for this. I don't have the energy for this. I'm ill. I just need to get home. She's being really unfair. She doesn't care about anyone but herself. Then I started worrying that she is going to become a really selfish person. And, you know, I can't do this. And then I thought, I'm a bad mum because why has she become like this? And this is a ridiculous situation. And then, you know, the temptation was to explode. And it made me feel uncared for. It made me feel unimportant. It made me feel like a rubbish mum. It made me feel like she would have more compassion had I parented her better. So that was kind of my perception of the situation and how it made me feel. So I would like you guys to just spend a few minutes just thinking about that situation. Well, 3 situations for you. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. If you don't manage all 3 of them now, that's fine, but just get as far along as you can. I'll write the questions. Oh, you got the questions up here actually, so I need to write them in the chat. And again, if you can give me a thumbs up or write in the chat once you're done. Would anyone like to share any of their situations? Oh, brilliant. My son lost his school coat and I made him go to school office to ask for it and completely lost my shit. Started telling him off that he is constantly losing his stuff. Has he got ADHD as well? Make sure you're writing down how it made you feel as well. So when certainly, yeah, it makes you feel like an even worse mum. What, because he's lost stuff, or oh, because you want to understand it better? Yeah. Although I would say that if losing things is part of your story, then it may be very triggering for you if he loses things. And if you didn't get a good reception when you had things lost, it could feel like a real emergency to you. Emily said, daughter locked herself and her baby sister in the car. Oof, when I was about to get pushed her out, felt scared, powerless and out of control. Absolutely. Yeah, because you what, constantly lose your stuff. Yeah. So that makes complete sense. Okay, right. So that is why we lose it. Hopefully it's helping you understand why you've been losing it. Oh, we've got another one from Kerry here. So first time yesterday, 6-year-old woke up, 12-week-old, and I was really annoyed and frustrated at her because we've told her several times not to touch, pick him up, wake up. Yeah, that's really, really frustrating. Second time she was screaming in the car because I said she couldn't eat a chocolate biscuit before her pepper and cucumbers. The loud noise, the shouting does hurt my ears. I was upset and then she made a nasty remark to me. Yeah. Actually, I would say, Kerry, I have just invested, having deliberated for the last 3 years, in some calmer, no, not the calmer ones, different noise reducing ones. They're not calmer, it's the other brand that's always on Instagram. And my daughter had a complete meltdown yesterday and I put them in and oh my goodness, the difference was remarkable. So highly recommend that. Okay, I am going to move on to the next one because I'm conscious of time and I don't know how long you all have got. I am very happy to stay on, especially considering I am completely ruined this in terms of tech. What I'd like you to do now is use those same 3 examples, but I want you to put in a reframed view. So I want you to think about how you could reframe your perceptions of the incident. So what is just as true that could have calmed your anger? So in my example with my daughter, I've just copied and pasted, I think, what I said before. But in my reframe view, I thought, okay, well, actually, she's experiencing restraint collapse, which is, you know, when you've been holding yourself in all day and trying to sort of mask your ADHD, and because she has ADHD, and deal with all the sensory stuff that she had going on, and deal with all the friendship stuff, and fit into this school mold and be the good person who she's expected to be. And then she gets home and it's like, I need to explore. There's the person who gets me, who loves me. I cannot restrain any longer. I'm going to collapse. So that's what she was doing. She was having restraint collapse. She's also just started a new, lots of her friends have gone to a different school because her school split in 2, which is very frustrating. She's been put in a class with people she doesn't really know very well. So she's had a really hard time making new friendship groups. This girl's in her class. She's invited her in. It probably felt really important to her to have this play date. And it probably did feel like a sort of end of the world type scenario for her. And, you know, she was really excited to go and I let her down, and she needs a hug and she needs someone to love her, and, you know, she needs to be wrapped up in cotton wool and looked after, is how I reframed it. And that made me feel empathic. It made me feel caring. It made me feel like wrapping her up in a warm blanket and making a little nest for us to just snuggle in. It completely changes how I feel if I can reframe it. So I would like you to just think with the examples that you came up with about what that reframed view would be, and how does it change how you feel about them. So I'm going to give you another sort of 3 minutes for that. I know it's not really enough time, but I do want to leave some time to sort of develop a bit of a toolkit for us. So maybe just do it with one example and then do the other ones afterwards. Again, give me a thumbs up when you've done one, and I'd love to hear your responses. Also, if anyone wants to unmute, please feel free. Yeah, I don't want to call you petite folk photography and light casting. So I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but absolutely. I mean, me too. And I had this conversation with my mum recently about restraint collapse and how I was, and it really, it's not a nice feeling, is it? And so when you're at work and then you explode at home at your son, yeah. Hang on, I've got Roz joining, so I'm just going to make you a contributor, Rob, so that you can be on the chat as well. There you go, Roz, you should be able to use the chat as well now.
Thank you.
Okay, so Kerry has said, I suppose my daughter just really wanted to go to her Lego club due to it being a routine she's used to. Her friends would be there. She was clearly upset about that and not understanding the other opportunities she had available. As parents, we do try to give her options, and as that's what you have to do in life. We can't always do everything. You also probably explode too quickly just with everything building up. Absolutely, and don't blame yourself for that. It's harder for you because you have ADHD to not explode. And the most important thing that you do is repair and apologise to your child for exploding. But obviously, if we can be peaceful and regulated, then our children will learn that. With the car thing, she didn't know what a serious thing she'd done. Yeah, I need to take some time to calm myself and then walk calmly. You did, Emily, but you were also in fight and flight. Your baby had been woken up. Oh no, it wasn't your baby being woken up in that scenario, was it? It was, oh yes, you'd locked it. So you were in fight or flight, and your kids were at risk. So it's an absolutely normal response to not be able to calm yourself down and think calmly in that moment. So please don't blame yourself. But yes, she didn't know what a serious thing she'd done. You're right. And I guess by thinking about that and thinking about how she might feel, how does that change how you feel? And also with you, Kerry, how does that sort of reframe change how you feel? And as well, petite photography and life casting. I'm going to call you petite. I don't know your name, but feel free to tell me. How does you recognising how you explode with at home with your son when you've got restraint collapse? How does that change how you feel about him, or does it? Often when we have our reframe, it helps us soften and see things from a different point of view, and it also makes us want to act in a different way. I'm going to let you guys do the rest of these on your own. I'd normally try and do them with you because I know it's really hard to go back and do them, but I do want to get onto the other section of this, which is our kind of final section. You feel like you need to give her more time breathe yourself and try and step into her shoes. Absolutely. And for some people, it's really hard to step into other people's shoes, but it's also really, really important. Okay, right. One thing that we can do, and you'll find this if you've got your worksheets, there is a page here to record the mantras. Should look a bit like this. Otherwise, just scribble them down. These are really good ways to quickly reframe situations, because this has taken us a little while to think about how we can reframe things. But obviously, like we've been saying, you can't always take that time. Your body goes into fight or flight. Your child will often look like the enemy. And it's not, you know your child is not the enemy. But when your big child has hit your little child or locked your little child in a car, you feel like, that is the threatening person who's done something threatening to another person who you also love. And so your body's automatic reaction is almost to think they're the enemy, and you've got to sort of attack back. And that's why we shout at our kids. That's a kind of biological reason. So mantras are a really good way of kind of having an automatic thing to say in your head to do that reframing. So these, I've just put down some of my favorites. I don't know if anyone else has any ones that they like, but please use them. Pop them in the chat or unmute yourself and share them. And I'd just like you to sort of write down a few of these that kind of really hit home and you think, actually, yeah, I could use that. So the ones I've got here is my absolute favorite is "It's not an emergency," because for me and my ADHD brain, I automatically go into kind of emergency response mode, and I'm often so go that to stop and slow down is like almost kind of going into reverse. In order to do that, it's such a change from going forwards to kind of coming backwards. And if I can say to myself, it's not an emergency, it stops me diving straight in, and I go, oh, okay, no, I don't need to respond with such urgency. Very rarely is it a true emergency. Choose love is just a really simple one. It's possibly a bit vague, but the idea behind that one is you've kind of got two fundamental reasons behind how you'll act. You either act out of fear or you act out of love. It's a theory. So if you can choose love rather than the fear provokes anger, love provokes all the kind of good, kind stuff that you might do. So choosing love is the better choice most of the time. Well, actually all of the time, but I find that possibly a bit vague. Don't take it personally. We so often take things our children say personally. Children will always say the worst thing they can possibly think of because they want to show us how angry they are. And if we react to that and push against that, they're just going to throw something bigger at us. It's not that they mean the thing that they say necessarily. It's just that they're trying to show you how upset they are. So don't take what they're saying personally. Try and look at the message underneath what they're saying. They're acting like a child because they are a child. Often we forget that they're children in the moment. Anyone would find this hard. I'm doing a good job. I can handle this. This is another one of my favorites because it brings in self-compassion. And I think I've done a podcast with a friend of mine who's a coach in self-compassion. I trained with her as a parenting coach, and she's kind of gone in the self-compassion direction. And we're going to do a workshop together next year because I actually think self-compassion is the bit that ADHD parents really need, because we're often so rooted in shame just due to our past and due to masking, and we often mask so much that we don't realize that we're being so unkind to ourselves. So the idea with this one is you stop and you take a breath and you sort of become present, and then you sort of place yourself with other people. So it's common humanity. We're kind of looking at ourselves in relation to others. It's not just you in this situation. Anyone would find this hard. I'm doing a good job. This is the compassion bit, being kind to yourself. I can handle this. You're kind of being your own supporter. I am more than enough. If you start to sort of get cross with yourself, that's a good one to use. He's not giving me a hard time. He's having a hard time. It's another really, really helpful one when we just think that they're, our kids often feel like they're giving us a hard time, and yes, they might be, but the reason for that is they're having a hard time. Kids will do well if they can. Generally, kids will do well if they can. If they're not doing well, it's probably because something in the environment isn't working for them. And also, she needs to cry, hold your boundary is a really good one if you struggle to set limits. Kids often need to cry, and we can either sort of get angry with them and sort of push away the feeling, or we give in to what they're asking for. But actually, it's okay for kids to cry. It's okay for them to be sad. We do need to hold boundaries. We do need to be in charge as parents. And that one can be a really helpful one if you struggle to set boundaries because you are uncomfortable with the crying or the upset. And then I breathe in love, I breathe out love, can be a sort of thing that you can say while you're breathing to try and give yourself a moment. Any of these resonate with people? Anyone got any other mantras that they use? Has anyone used mantras before? Feel free to unmute. Is this resonating, the stuff with mantras? You haven't used them, Kerry? So what I would suggest, if you haven't used mantras before, is pick one or two. This too shall pass. Yes, Beck. Yeah. Absolutely. You struggle to remember them in the moment. So I would say pick one that you like, and if the other people in your house will accept it, write it on some post-it notes and just stick it in really prominent places. One on the fridge, one outside your kid's bedroom door, or one in the places where, maybe one on the dashboard of the car, one in places where escalations tend to happen, where lots of shouting tends to happen, maybe by the front door when you're trying to leave the house, and sort of leave them up for a week or so, and just try and notice them as you're going past them. And there's no point leaving it up for longer than that, because you just stop noticing them. But what you want to do is try and sort of notice them in the moment. So have them in places where the moment's going to happen. And once you start using them, you should continue using them. I mean, you could even just write it on your hand and just keep writing on your hand for a week. But once you start using them, it will start to stick in your brain, and that will be another tool that you can use. So I really recommend it. I know it sounds a little bit like, yeah, but this is really going to work. It's a really good kind of sort of flip the switch type tool that just reminds you of all the other choices you've got in the moment, rather than just reacting. So it's just one tool in a big toolkit. Okay, so toolkits. Let's create our toolkit. So in your workbook, there is a sort of tick list, and I've written down some ideas of things in there that you might want to use. If you don't have the workbook, you could just scribble some ideas down on a piece of paper, any work. But I'd like to sort of open this up to you, really. I mean, there's the ideas that I've put in here, and I'm happy to talk through them, but I'm wondering what other people use, if anything, to help them regulate. In fact, what I'm going to do is I am going to stop sharing so that we can see each other. If anyone's able to take their cameras off. If you don't want to, that's fine. But it might just be a bit nicer to have a chat where we can see each other. I'm getting the sense people don't want to take their cameras off. I guess we are on a recording, so okay, I'll leave it with that, without the cameras then. But does anyone want to share any tools that they use for regulating? So I'll start. A really helpful one, as I've said. I use in my program that I do, I sort of have it into 3 sections. We've got roots, we've got nurture, and we've got space. And I use those 3, root, nurture, space, as something that I tell myself when I start to get a bit sort of dysregulated, essentially. So root is about kind of placing my feet on the floor and sort of imagining almost like roots growing from them, or just really feeling the floor with my toes and my feet, or if I'm sitting down, my bottom on the chair. Sometimes I might lean against the wall or even sit down on the floor, depending on how I'm feeling, but just to feel held. Nurture is then asking myself, what do I need to do to nurture myself? So it might be kind of just rubbing my arms like that, or taking some really deep breaths. I mean, I sort of do the breaths with the root as well, but it could just be taking some more deep breaths. Do I need a glass of water? Do I need to run my hands under cold water? Asking myself, what do I need? And then space. Can I deal with this situation now, or do I need to take some space? Obviously, if my children are fighting and clouting each other, then no, it's not the right time to take space. I need to create safety first. But actually, maybe I can create space. Maybe I can say, look, I can't, like, I just need a minute before I come and deal with this. I need to calm myself down, and I'll take myself outside, or I'll take myself into my bedroom, or I might take myself to the toilet, somewhere where I can just create a bit more space to just come back to myself. And then if I can, which often I don't have the ability to, I might do a a very short meditation just to bring myself down. Kerry has said, I go to a space on my own, so I just have a few moments, close my eyes. Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying with the space bit. Anyone else got anything? Typical ADHD when we're like, oh, I don't know how to do this. Regulating is not something that can happen. So some other ideas that I use are breathing. So taking some deep breaths, but actually doing it in a way that's really intentional. So I'll put my hands on my tongue, like one hand on my tummy and one hand on my heart, for instance, and just really try and sort of feel the breath kind of going into my belly and then coming out, and then trying to sort of breathe in through my chest space and through my heart and out through my heart, and just try and sort of calm myself that way. I can't do that when I'm really angry. Like I do not have access to that. I think neurotypicals tend to be able to do that a lot easier than ADHD people. But I mean, if someone tells me to breathe and I'm angry, or even if I think of breathing and I'm angry, I'll be like, I'm not feeling calm. So that, it does help, but it's got to be for a lot longer than you'd think. Beck said, find your pets and focus on them. Yeah, I love that. And that's kind of nurturing, but you're nurturing them. And, you know, yeah, I really like that. Another thing I might do when I'm with my children, if they're really stressing me out, is try and focus on a small part of them, like maybe their eyelashes or their fingers, or something that can kind of just remind me of how little they are. I can find that quite helpful, to just remember that they're vulnerable and little, and not this kind of big beast that my brain has pretended that they are in that moment. Another thing is to feel, I think this is probably the most powerful one for me, is to feel the sensations in my body. So rather than getting swept into the story going on in my head, so, you know, I'm really cross because this has happened, and this is why it shouldn't have happened, and this is why I'm right and they're wrong. Instead of getting stuck into that narrative, I will close my eyes and just feel which part of my body feels uncomfortable, which part is hurting, and sort of track that feeling through. And as I said before, emotions only stay in your body as you don't get stuck in the story for 90 seconds. So if you track that feeling of discomfort and experience it, and you're able to do that for 90 seconds, you'll go through the cycle, and then you'll be able to come out calm. And you might need to sort of move with it. You might need to sort of express that anger or that sadness kind of physically. So you might need to kind of shake yourself out, or march around, or go for a walk around your house, or up and down the stairs, or whatever it takes. But that can be really helpful. There's another thing that I learned very recently called a VU breath, where basically it's a very low tone, and you basically go, and you keep doing that for as long as you can. And what that does is it sort of stimulates the vagal nerve, which is basically gets your parasympathetic nervous system activated, so that that's basically the bit of your nervous system which makes you calm. So that's really, really good. And I did try it the other day, and it worked really, really well. So it's just literally going and holding it for as long as you can, as low as you can. What else? So reframing we've talked about, but that's probably going to be quite difficult to do straight off until you've had lots of practice. So that's kind of worth doing. If you can't do something in the moment, you might want to come back to it that evening or later on in the day, and just think about how you could reframe. And the more you do reframes, the more you're sort of helping your mind to learn how to do those reframes. And the more you practice, the easier it will become. So all of this is practice. And the more we practice, the more we start to reshape our brains and rewire our brains. So they say the neurons that fire together wire together. So if we're able to fire the neurons at the same time, so the neuron for saying a mantra and then getting calm, or doing a meditation and then getting calm, they will start to fire together, they'll wire together, and they'll happen quicker, and then you'll be able to calm down quicker. So that's what we're trying to do with all of this work. It's not just a kind of so you can be calm with your kids. This is a lifetime tool, and the more you use it, the better it gets. Meditation I mentioned, really recommend meditation. And actually I could probably do a whole workshop in meditation for ADHD, because I don't know, could I just get a show of hands or a yes in the chat? Does anyone here, well, firstly, does anyone here meditate? Has anyone here tried meditating and found it really difficult? Yeah. So this is something that I'm really passionate about. I think meditating, you do as well, Emily, yeah. Lee used to get distracted way too easily. Can't meditate, your brain just sings songs and travels into the world. Yeah, okay. So meditating is one of those things that I think is particularly hard if you're ADHD, because it's so uncomfortable for us, because we are so good at distracting our brains, and actually being still with our brains feels really uncomfortable. And for the first year that I meditated, I used to do sort of 3 to 4 minute parenting focused meditations. I would Google after it, can people with meditation, can people with ADHD meditate? Like, why can't I meditate? Is it bad for you to meditate with ADHD? It felt so bad to me. And I never got an answer. But actually, as I continued doing it, I did find that it got easier and easier. And I sort of went through the motions for quite a long time. But I have now found it to be the most helpful tool, because I can calm down really quickly and get to us. I actually really enjoy it now. I don't meditate for 20 minutes. I meditate for about 4 or 5. Any longer than that and I'm gone. I also find visualization meditations much easier for me than others, and other people will find other ones much easier. Body scans are also really good for feeling what's going on in your body. Or breath work, I think, is also a really good one for ADHD, because you're focusing really hard on the breath, and the breath is quite dynamic. So it's not like you're sitting there going, oh, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. You're actually sort of, you know, you're moving your body through some really quite extreme sensations. And that can be much more attainable, but it gives your brain this sense of silence and calm. And the more you practice it, the easier it gets. And again, that has been shown to increase vagal tone, which is what helps you get calm, and also to improve the workings of the brain and make people calmer. But I think they looked at people who meditated for 20 minutes a day, and I think it had an 80% success rate in the way that their brains then reacted to different images that they showed them on MRI. So it is really fascinating, and I would really encourage you guys to give it a go. But don't expect it to be easy, because it's not. But I now meditate religiously every day for 4 minutes. And I use Insight Time, which is free, and it's got loads of different types of meditation on there. Some specifically for ADHD, although I don't actually like those ones very much, but worth trying. Emily, you've got your hand up. I don't know if that was to say that meditation's hard, or if you've got your hand up because you want to say something. Just think I find it hard. Okay, fair enough. Cool. So I think they're the main things really that I wanted to say about regulation, that I think are helpful to start with. Does anyone have any questions about meditation? Or about any of those things? Okay, right. Where the meditation for ADHD is. So on Insight Timer, it's an app. They've got loads of different meditations on there, all by different meditation teachers. And I think if you type in ADHD, you might find some that are Insight, so INSIGHT. But yeah, you might find some of them helpful. I've also recorded my own one, body scale meditation, with a sort of self-compassion focus, which I think you'd be able to find on Instagram or on Facebook, and certainly in the My Parent Village group, or just message me and I can send that to you to give that a go. But I'm very happy to recommend meditations to people. I'm happy to talk offline about it if you want to know any more. Okay, so hopefully you guys have, some of those things have kind of resonated with you. Is there anything that people are going to try as a result of some of those things that we've talked about? Pop it in the chat or just unmute yourself and let us know. Definitely mantra, yeah. Which mantra, Kerry? Don't take it personally. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good one. And the reframing, yeah, I think the reframing is really, really powerful. Journaling actually is something I didn't say, but that might be a really good way to start to think about some of this stuff, is to kind of, yeah, do some reframes at night in a journal. Tapping, yes. So tapping is a technique where you start on the karate chop bit of your hand. It's basically, these are all meridian points, and the idea is that it's a kind of brain body integration. So you start tapping here and you say, even though I got really angry just now, and then you might move to your eyebrows, I'm still a good parent, and then you move to here. I know that sometimes I get cross and I shout, and then you go into your eyes, but that doesn't mean I'm a bad parent. And then you go here, just above your lip. I love my children, and then under your chin, and they love me. Then you go to your collarbone, and I don't have to be perfect all the time. And then you go under your arm here, just kind of where the bra line is, if you can see. And that's okay, or something like that. So you say to yourself, like, even though this happened, I'm still a good person. Or even though, you know, there's a lot of theory to it, and it would take a long time to explain, and I'm not very good at explaining it, but there's lots of resources out there on tapping, so just Google it. But it's a kind of meditation technique again, but it uses the meridian points, and it can be quite a helpful way of kind of integrating things and also giving you something to do. So again, that actually is probably quite a good one for ADHD, and there's increasing research to show that it is a really, really helpful tool. And I've got a book on tapping sitting on my bedside table, unread, but I will read it. Okay, so the last slide I wanted to just briefly talk you through. I'm going on to slides, but of course you can't see them because I'm not sharing. Let me just jump back onto the slides. Here we go. So this is showing you, yeah. So this is the program that I run. So this is the Growing Extraordinary Humans program, and it's a 6-month program where I try and take families from extra to extraordinary. So I do trainings a little bit like we did today, and you can see the arrow that's going along the bottom. We kind of covered maybe half of the self-regulation bit of this. And the training that I do is designed individually for the client that I'm working with. They also get one-to-one parent coaching, and then they get the space and the tools to help you rewire your brain for change. And I walk you through sort of similar exercises to the ones that we've done today. And the course focuses around sort of 3 main bits. So we've got roots, nurture, and space. So roots, we talk about what your past, and I help you understand how your nervous system might be protecting you from threats that are no longer there, so that you no longer need to be protecting them, but your sort of instinctual reaction that you've learned from a really young age is to protect you from these things. So you are reacting in certain ways because of that. We help sort of work you through that. I help you learn to regulate your nervous system so you can be calmer and more responsive. And I help you to figure out what you need to look after yourself so you can look after your children, because of course you can't pour from an empty cup. Then we go on to nurture, which is about increasing your connection with everyone in the family, understanding your children and their behaviour, and learning how to ensure that everyone feels seen and safe and understood and valued. Because as we all know, as people with ADHD, if you don't feel understood and seen, then you don't have the same, it doesn't feel good. And as kids, you know, I certainly remember as a child, not feeling seen was probably the hardest bit for me, and it made me not feeling understood and blamed for being the way I was, has left me with lots of shame. We also develop strategies to meet the individual needs of your family, and we resolve the trigger points where things go wrong. And then space is about playing the long game. So your goal is to be an extraordinary, it's to raise an extraordinary human. So my cat just comes out on me. Not an obedient child. So it's helping them to become the people who are going to ask questions and seek to understand things rather than just doing them because they've been told to. Help them to develop a moral compass and respect them as individuals, so that they will respect themselves and others as a result of that. So that's the program I run. I've also got a Facebook group, which I think some of you are in, My Parent Village. We've got sort of 2 bits to it. So we've got a chat on there, which is kind of about how, you know, where people will talk about sort of how to deal with issues with their children who may be extra. So by extra, I mean sort of neurodivergent, and in any guise, children who basically present in more challenging ways than perhaps neurotypical children. And we've also got another sort of branch of that, which is more active, which is ADHD Parents. And we talk about kind of largely regulation actually, but how we can look after ourselves, and also just sort of sharing and having community and helping ourselves to kind of to not feel bad when stuff goes wrong. You know, when you shout at your kids or whatever, it's not about it's not about sort of feeling bad about it. It's about kind of making the repair and having community, so you don't feel so alone in this, because I think as ADHD parents, we can often feel really quite alone. So yeah, that is kind of the end of everything I wanted to say. I know we've massively overrun, and I really do apologise. I know a few people have had to drop off. But does anyone have any questions? Like you've said, you found it great to have a moment to think about your parenting. Brilliant. I'm really pleased. I'd love to hear your takeaways. Like what is the one thing that you're going to take away from today? What has stuck out the most to you? Reframing. Yeah. It's a really helpful exercise, isn't it? Anyone else got anything that they found helpful? Doing the mantra and stopping the mind frame, I'm a bad mum. Absolutely. None of us are bad mums. In fact, the fact that you've all come on here shows that you're really good parents. because if you were a bad parent, you wouldn't bother to come on here. And you know, you're showing up for yourself, which you need to do to show up for your kids. In fact, increasing research is showing us that we need to look after ourselves first. We can't be good parents if we don't. Absolutely can't. Particularly coming up to Christmas.